All right, we are live for a Wednesday edition of the Hangout. Excited to be back with the fellas. Looking forward to hanging out a little bit and talking about relevant subjects. Just giving a little bit of a twist in reference to what we think is really going on. But we got Mr. Andre in the middle, and to my far left is Tom. And so, fellas, how you guys doing, man?
Fantastic.
Doing great.
That's good. So, Tom, man, why don't you kick us off? I figure it's always good to hear some fresh voices and new perspectives. So, Tom, why don't you kick us off? How you want to approach today?
So I think the big news that maybe isn't being seen as the big news is definitely the Trump indictment, but not so much for the people that are like maybe thinking about it, because I don't know if you guys saw Ron DeSantis's response to this on Monday. But basically he took the opportunity rather than basically, as I think DC Drano put it, Ron DeSantis got outflanked by Kevin McCarthy. When you have Kevin McCarthy coming out and being stronger on the idea that, hey, you don't take a politically weaponized district attorney's office and indict a former president for political reasons for a misdemeanor that's past the statute of limitations solely to make a name for yourself, because it's going to tear apart our republic at its seams. You don't go back from there. There's no turning that cart around.
Yeah.
When you have Kevin McCarthy coming out and saying that, and then Ron DeSantis, his response was, well, I don't know what's involved with paying a porn star hush money. And he said it 3 times, because I'm sure Ken Griffin over there at Citadel and the rest of those at Sequoia and the rest of these donor class people got him a nice little can line. And they said, hey, Ronnie boy, you say this, everybody's going to love you. But it completely backfired in his face, because it's so beyond politics. The idea that Alvin Bragg over in Manhattan is going to perp walk Donald Trump. I don't care if it's Donald Trump. I don't care if it's Biden. I don't care if it's George Bush, Clinton, doesn't matter. There's a principle here. There's our society at stake. The republic is literally, like, everybody always says this, oh, our republic's going to collapse. Our republic's going to collapse. You take a banking crisis, then you add in the fact that, whatever schmuck DA in whatever district anywhere in the country is going to start perp walking former presidents.
Mm-hmm.
What do we have left? The banking regulators are already just throwing out rules. Hey, I don't care. Let's 250,000. Let's make it 500. Let's make it 5 billion, 5 trillion, whatever. Let's just make sure we pump enough money in. Oh, wait, he's a former president. He's got Secret Service. That's a law. We're going to put him in jail. I guess the Secret Service is going to jail too. Doesn't matter. We're going to do what we want because it's politically expedient, and damned be the country, because nothing else matters. We're running into this state of these leaders are no longer governing with the consent of the citizenry. They're governing in a way to appeal to Klaus Schwab, to appeal to the UN, to appeal to some higher office that's extranational, that they can use this position here in the United States or in Europe or wherever to get a step up and say, okay, damn to be the people. I'm going to go to the UN. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. And the idea that DeSantis is just going to absolutely ignore the fact that we have this weaponization of the judicial process against a former president, again, that will rip this country apart. It seems to me he's much more in that class of damn be the people, I'm moving up, rather than this is fundamentally wrong.
Now,
yeah, he lost my.
No, real quick. So once again, like, not too plugged in. So what happened to the Trump, arrest? I mean, what happened today? Did something officially go down, or is that more so? Because it's my suspicion it's the distraction outside to literally divert people's attention from the banking situation, which is picking up. But did Trump actually walk out in handcuffs today, or what?
No, you're 100% correct. This is a distraction. There's a bigger agenda at play. Definitely 100%. From everything I know right now, like, the Manhattan DA's office or the Manhattan court is barricaded. There's riot cops everywhere. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a thing that's coming down the pipe. So it's not imagined. So there's that. But as far as I know, it's going to be next week. There's the grand jury is still kind of like coagulating and doing its thing, but it's like a distraction from like each one of these things. The banking crisis and the arresting a former president, in my opinion, will be equally as detrimental to society. Personally, that's what I think.
I heard, but I'm not sure that the meeting was called off today for that grand jury. And I heard the reason was that one of the jurors leaked that the prosecutor was holding back like 600 pages of exculpatory evidence. And so basically evidence that would exonerate him from even the misdemeanor, right? So it's definitely a distraction. And this distraction made DeSantis look at a minimum
like
weak.
A clown.
And you could take it to the extreme and say that it made him look like he was in that camp of, career politicians that's being paid to talk for someone else. Because if it was me, because Trump is a resident of Florida. And if it was me, I would say, look, even though I may be running for president versus this guy, no citizen of mine is going to be extradited from this state for that reason, especially not a former president. This is political weaponization of the judicial system by the prosecutor in New York City. It's not going to happen while I'm governor. So the fact that he came out and said, well, I don't know too much about paying bribes to or paying hush money to a porn star. He took the opportunity to take a shot at Trump while leaving it open for New York to do whatever they want to do. And that just shows me which side he's really on. He's doing a great job relative to like the governor of Michigan, right? Or the governor of California.
That's a low blow, man.
Or the governor of California, right? I mean, he's saying the right stuff in my opinion, as far as like putting family first, protecting kids, lowering taxes on certain things that you attribute to raising a family. I love that. But that was an opportunity to paint a bright line in the sand or dig a line in the sand saying, no, we know what you Democrats are doing. If we're going to arrest every president for doing what he did, we got to dig up a lot of presidents and put them in jail, right? So, yeah, not good. And it's definitely covering up this banking thing.
And so, like, okay, so it's supposed to be. So I remember last week. So it came about like literally, like, was it Friday or was it midweek last week when they talked about when it first broke air that New York attorney generals talking about filing charges or whatever and arresting Trump on Monday. Then it was Tuesday. Then it was Wednesday. Now you say it's next week. And so literally the airway, this is the equivalent of Russia gate, Russia, he collaborated with Russia and all those headlines that the mainstream media ran with just to distract us from what was going on at that particular time. And the same thing now with the banking situation. And so, like, outside of course, the banking situation, I'm hearing more and more about how it's getting bad. Like, from commercial real estate imploding and all the debt piled up on top of debt. So, like that rush, I don't think this Trump stuff is going to stick as far as being the primary focal point of all his fan base, just because of what is exposed to me is that DeSantis Trump riff, which of course is part of the whole psyop propaganda as well. But even that, like, at what point do people get tired of talking about politics and just literally want to focus on the money? Because we can't really make much change on who the candidates are, but you can make change as far as trying to get as much money out the bank account as you can while you still can.
No, you are absolutely right, Mike. And like, this is what I did my video on today is like, I think that people are starting to wake up to the fact that you got violent, fiery riots in France. And Macron going through a no confidence vote. The prime minister of Spain just survived a no confidence vote. You have strikes that are about to cripple Britain or the UK, right? You have all of this craziness. You got the ICC putting out a arrest warrant for Putin, right? At some point, and I see this, and I'm like, just from people I follow and things I read, people are starting to realize that these political figures do not have the power they think they do. And the JP Morgans and the BlackRocks and these financial institutions clearly have all of the power, because look at the Swiss National Bank spent $100 billion to backstop this Credit Suisse thing. That's an eighth of their GDP. With just laws be damned. Same here. Same thing is happening. It is clear now, I think, to more people that the banks and the financial institutions, they make the rules, they can break the rules, they can do whatever the hell they want, because who's going to put the handcuffs on? Who?
You missed somebody too that I heard this morning. I heard about this morning. The Dutch, like
yes,
farmers,
yep. Duda.
Yeah, they won big over there. So a lot of people are rejecting this. And you mentioned your podcast today, the one I did last week, and I'm gonna keep this theme going. I'm calling it Happy Thomas Sowell Friday, but it's about the narrative. The more and more people hear it, you don't even really have to think about it. All you got to do is hear it, because it's so logical, right? You can't. It's undefeated. Logic is undefeated. So what they're trying to do, like you're saying, more and more people are waking up to this, is because more and more people are tuning out MSNBC, CNN, and just listening to something else like this channel. And the thing, it just makes sense. It's like, okay, Trump is supposed to be in handcuffs on Monday, Tuesday, now Wednesday, maybe Thursday, but Powell is up there talking about he's raising interest rates again, and this isn't doing anything for inflation. My eggs still cost a ton of money. And I think the reason why people aren't like out in the streets yet, or have really woken up yet, is because the bank bailout so far has only helped like the 1%, right? Like, what was that out here? Silicon Valley Bank, 97% of their accounts were like over $250,000. So no one, that common man hasn't gotten directly hit in the face yet. And I think that's what they're trying to hold off. We're going to, okay, we got an arrest warrant for Putin. We're going to put Trump in handcuffs. We're going to tell everybody in the mainstream news to expect a rate that Powell is going to, lower an interest rate. But no surprise, he raised the interest rate. So now y'all talk about that surprise. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, like Mike said, everything's falling apart. And when it falls, we all gonna get hit in the head with a ton of bricks. Then hopefully it's not too late. Hopefully you can recover, or you prepared yourself for what's about to happen. But a lot of people are gonna be caught out there.
Yeah.
But
as long as you can go to the ATM, withdraw some funds,
your 300,
and if you can have make sure, as long as your check's deposited, every 2 weeks, the way things have been going for eons, then we all fine and good. But the moment the checks don't clear, or the banking system has a glitch to where you error on the screen, that's gonna get people's attention, and then game on. You know what I'm saying? Then it's like, what the hell's going on? And so that's what they're trying to avoid.
That's what happened. That happened with Wells Fargo, I think, last Friday.
Yep.
Yeah. Like if you checked your online account or whatever it says, you may be missing some money. We're working on it. And then everybody just went back to normal. Like, okay. And I thought, I was like, Fred Sanford and Son. I was like, this is it. It's the big one. It's here. It's over. But they recovered. And then Monday? It was the next. Was it that day or the following day? SVB, whatever bank imploded. So it's getting close.
Imagine the panic from Wells Fargo depositors that were affected at that moment. Like how no matter what you were doing throughout the day, whether it's at work, at home, when you saw that changed your whole day. Literally, you like, what? You get customer service?
Yeah.
I can't get nobody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
hey,
I got Wells Fargo. I got Wells Fargo. And it was like your balance may be different. So I'm like, well, what was my balance? You know, I don't check my balance every minute. Like, I got people withdrawing off my accounts. I'm paying mortgages and stuff. And I'm like, oh, so if they, let's say just for simple numbers, I had $10,150 in there. And then, no, let's say $13,150 in there. And they say, oh, your balance might be wrong. But unbeknownst to me, somebody took some money out of my account the night before. I didn't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day I come back and I got, $1,200 in the account. You know, like, how do I know like what was going on? So,
but okay,
yeah,
so
man, I think
this is the thing.
And on the internet, the more and more you see, I'm sorry, Tom, I'll circle back to it. I'll let you talk. I'm seeing more and more people, and maybe it just maybe my feed, more and more people talking about the financial issues, like common guys, like not, the
people who tuned in,
like not the
know
big
everything,
niggas, but just the common guys like us talking about finance and like these narratives, like we're gonna talk about with Fauci and stuff. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. That like just people who are normally not financial, like I do not like Ben Shapiro, but when you got Ben Shapiro talking freaking finance, there's something going on. And then to get to this Wells Fargo thing, right? Wells Fargo, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're up there with one of the most corrupt banking institutions in the entire friggin' country. I don't know how many crimes they've committed, how many billions of dollars they had to pay, but they're freaking up there. So you mean to tell me that just by accident, they're going to alert all their customers like, hey, wait a second, your banking balance might be different or negative? Because let's think of the ramifications of this today, from then to today. How many people are calling and be like, hey, yeah, my balance wasn't correct, and it's still not correct. You owe me money. How much money did they steal in this process? How many people didn't notice it at all? It's Wells Fargo. I mean, it's Wells Fargo. Like, we're going to create fake freaking accounts and get fined by the government for it, but not go to jail for it. Wells Fargo. Like, to think that this is an accident and they're going to broadcast this instead of deal with it on a person by person basis is just ludicrous to me. While there's a banking collapse going on, you gotta be screwing with me if anybody thinks that's true. It's absolutely just the rich getting richer and stealing. And they're literally at that point with Wells Fargo, they're sticking their hand right in your pocket and saying, hey, give me that. And you don't remember what you had. I'm the one telling you what you had.
You know what? It wouldn't be so surprising to me that, with Wells Fargo's technical error, and I would have to check this, but it's probably good to say that all the too big to fail banks have had some type of snafu in the last year or two since this whole cyber, concern has, become the primary narrative they're going to use, because we already know that, part of the next wave of whatever is going to be a cyber event. And of course, what better way to really solidify this transition other than to have glitches to where you got negative or nothing in your accounts. And so if all these banks have had these type of issues, clearly it's accidental, it's intentional. This is a great setup for the ultimate event that will lead down the line. Like, we were trying to work out the glitches and stuff like that, and all of a sudden Putin, Russia. And of course, we know Xi and Putin met last 2 days. They said change is coming. They shook hands, walked away, and it's like, okay, what type of change is coming? Wouldn't it be interesting how the U.S. will just use that as a way to say, the change they were talking about was undoing the American banking system? So that was their goal. They're attacking us. You see where this narrative goes.
Yeah. Now all you gotta do is put it out there first. Just put it out there, because it's not whether it's true or not, it's whether it's first or not. Right. So you just get it out there. Monday morning CNN. Putin and Xi have attacked the American banking system with no proof, no nothing. And, people run with it. Like, hey, Russia blew up their own pipeline. What?
You know what? Now, you see the new narrative?
Instead of turning the valve off on their side, they
save themselves money. Did you see the new narrative about how it's some Ukraine terrorists, some Ukraine radicals
Yeah, with
US
like a
said
boat.
it was Ukraine radicals after that piece came out from that reporter saying that it's definitely the West, yada yada, yes, US special forces, all that stuff like that. Then I think it was, I don't know if it was the Pentagon or somebody else. They said it was terrorists in Ukraine that did that. And then I think even Ukraine was like, hell, it wasn't none of us. It wasn't our guy.
Did you see the picture of that boat that they put out that they did it on? It was like a 30-foot boat, and they apparently it was like 6 special ops guys, like Ukrainian nationalists, like 3,000 pounds of explosives, and it's like I don't know how many fishing rods I can fit on here. What the hell do you mean this is what they use this boat for? It's ridiculous.
I mean, people, somebody got to get upset at this because they obviously think we're so stupid. Like when I heard that the Russians blew up their own pipeline, even though they had an off switch, like that just makes no sense. Like we're gonna, you know what? We're gonna freeze those Europeans out. Hey, forget that switch. Blow up the pipeline we just spent all these billions of dollars on, so we have to spend more dollars on rebuilding it after they freeze out. But people are like,
as the Germans are protesting in the street to get it turned back on that same day. Let's wait till they're protesting and blow it up. Really stick it to these common guys. We'll show them. Screw with Russia. I'll blow this shit up. Spite myself.
Let's talk about the recent events with Fauci out in the streets. I'm assuming by now a lot of people had a chance to see that. Let me bring it on the screen here. But you see Fauci and the health person going door to door. And my man let him have it. And the thing is, I haven't seen Fauci or paid attention to Fauci in quite some time. I thought he was low key. I thought he retired already or something like that. But so is this more evidence of people waking up, like like your average Joe is actually waking up from the health situation and soon to be the financial situation? And is this leading to something that can be transformative for our country? You know what I'm saying? If people wake up in time, what are you guys thinking?
Yeah, I said. I've been known to say, who is ever listening, but I've been known to say the internet is really going to make it hard to have a narrative come from a central place unless that narrative is actually true. Mm-hmm. So it's nothing unusual. I quote de Tocqueville, who wrote that book, Democracy in America, back in like 1800 and something, whatever. He said the king of all science, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, the king of all science is the ability to basically gather people under one umbrella and influence them to vote your way. That's all the power. That's what you need in America to be powerful. So basically what he was saying was, you may have an interest here. John may have an interest. Sam may have an interest. June may have an interest. But separately, they're not powerful. But if you get them together, they're very powerful because of democracy. It's a democracy. You need 3 votes. If you can get all 3 of those votes in, then you're good. So what a lot of people did going all the way back then, they utilized the press to create a narrative that all 3 of these people can get behind. They'll sacrifice their, little piece of pie to get behind one narrative. Mm-hmm. And now you see, the mainstream media was your only source of information, right? Let's just take it back to the 80s. You had ABC, NBC, CBS, like that was it. If Walter Cronkite lied to you, you just got lied to. You ain't no way to disprove it, right? But then the internet came on, and then, hey, we got all these, what is Andre talking about? I ain't never heard that. He must be lying because he's not a credible source, right? Mm-hmm. But now COVID comes along, everybody's glued to CNN at the airport, in your bathroom, CNN everywhere, in your car, right? And they pumping out this narrative, get this thing done, and you won't infect other people. But then you find out by listening to other sources that that's not true. And it's not a conspiracy. The people who made the thing said, no, that's not true. Right? And so now you got this guy Fauci showing up at your house with this lie he was saying in 2020. It's like, dude, We got the internet. Like, we know this isn't true. I can quote the pharmaceutical company that your people are paying to create these drugs, and it says it's not true. Now you're gonna show up at my house and tell me to take it.
Mhm.
So that narrative is kind of falling apart. And if it's falling apart there, when I say there, I mean the hood. I'm assuming that the house I was looking at is not like a 4,500 square foot multi-million-dollar home, but he could be, he could be identifying as a multi-millionaire. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They wouldn't be going door to door. They wouldn't be going door to door in that type of environment. They're going door to door in an environment where they want to get the majority, which happens to also be the minority. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
In the hood.
Yeah,
so that's where
if you
roll
can
the sleeves up, went knocking on doors.
Right. Yeah, all of DC, it's never been there. It's like outside of like K Street and like outside of the Capitol proper, it's all the hood, and it's bad. All of DC is bad. There's no nice places. That's why they all live in Arlington and not in DC.
Right. And if you can get that population of any like DC, any urban area, which is going to be ran by Democrats, right? If you can get them to buy into your narrative, it seeps out of that area. So that dude, let's say that dude who everybody's seen on the video, bought into Fauci. What he's saying, I got to get this and da-da-da. Well, he knows people that don't live next door to him. He probably works with people who live outside of his area who are not African American. He probably works with some white guy or some Mexican guy or Native American, whatever. And he's like towing the narrative line, like, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that. So that united front that often African Americans present is really strong for a narrative. One in particular, all white people you don't know are racist. So now you got even white people thinking that white person is a racist. Why? Because everybody in the hood thinks every white person you don't know is a racist. Where's the proof of that? It's just a narrative that they put out there, and we biting into it. But now, if you guys look at, like, especially on YouTube, there's a lot of young black people who are questioning that narrative of, now I wrote down some systematic racism, the black culture is a direct connection to African culture. Slavery is unique to America.
To that point,
the imagery.
Royce White, he's the we were just talking about this. Royce White is the epitome of what you're talking about. He represents that perfectly. When George Floyd riots are going on, he leads them to the Federal Reserve. Why?
Exactly.
Because the Federal Reserve and the CCP and shipping the jobs off to China are the reason George Floyd is dead, because he doesn't have a manufacturing job that he can support his family with. So he's out there on the streets doing stupid shit and dying from a drug overdose and a cop on his neck. If he just had the opportunities that existed in that city some 40, 50 years ago, that man would not be dead today. So Royce White is the epitome of what you're saying. And it all comes down, everything comes back to freaking money. The Federal Reserve, really, at the end of the day, it's
and let's not forget corrupt governments that literally have pumped the streets with the drugs and is in the drug game itself. You know what I'm saying? So the drugs wouldn't be so easy accessible if our government didn't flood our streets with them.
Watch how I tie that into what Tom is saying. I'm gonna bring you together. So you got the federal minimum wage, you got the minimum wage law, right? That came around in the 30s and the 1930s. And before that, Black teenage work participation was above whites. So basically, back in the day, your grandfather, great-grandfather, everybody worked as teenagers, right? That continued to be the trend up until around the 70s, 80s, where if you were a teenager and you were Black, you just worked. But then minimum wage started to creep up. And now the skill set of the unemployed, basically you don't have no skills. You're 16, 17-year-old dude. You don't have any skills. So when they started bringing the minimum wage up higher and higher, Well, the employer is like, his skills aren't worth, let's say, $3.15 an hour. Mm-hmm. So now you just don't hire them. You have the employees that are already there do more work, right? Then what happened in the 80s? You got all these laid off, non-working teenage males just hanging out on the street corner. Mm-hmm. They want to impress the girls, right? The girls want to be impressed. Somebody comes around and says, hey, homie, you sell this little thing of crack. You know, you pay me $20 for the crack. You go sell it for $200. You can go buy that girl, you know, a purse or whatever. So now you got that tied in together where democratic policies directly negatively affect African-American communities. You wouldn't have a crack epidemic if people were at work. Because you probably, I don't know if you're young enough to remember the Young Boys Incorporated out of Detroit.
I grew up hearing about a lot of it. You know, I was too young.
I grew up with them. So,
are you in?
You grew up hearing about it. I grew up with them. Dude, people were just like, before the crack epidemic, people just complained about, all right, man, I could do this paper route, but now it's getting embarrassed. Man, I'm 14 doing the paper route. Can't be doing it. So then guys were like, hey, man, just run across the street, sell drug, blah, blah, blah. If you get caught, you a minor, ain't nothing going to happen to you. And boom, all of a sudden you got labor for the drug trade. Mm-hmm. And the adults, when all these jobs were leaving Detroit, right, flying out like roaches, jobs were taking off like roaches when the lights come on. So the people who are left behind, the labor force left behind, their husbands can't take care of their families. The government is saying, hey, girl, you ain't got to rely on him. The government going to take care of you. So the family splits up, right? And at the end of the day, what do you have? You have a dependent population that's always voting for Democrats. And that narrative that, and instead of looking at yourself, Democrats, and saying, you know, our policies aren't really serving our community, they look at people like Tom, who ain't got nothing to do with it, and say, you know, well, Detroit's like this because a bunch of racists. Man, when I was growing up, Detroit was like 99.999% black. So how you gonna blame racism on the fact that you got these boys who are out of work, can't work because they're not worth the minimum wage, but instead of going to a 9 to 5, you can make thousands by selling drugs.
Killing your own kind, man. That was a part of their agenda, amongst many other things. So, just out of curiosity, real quick, you know, this is a picture of, I guess, the Young Boys Incorporated.
Young
so
Boys
Sue Dre used to dress like that too, with the white hat, with the white brim.
I ain't gonna admit that.
This looks like I don't have my glasses
is that
on.
you in the back?
What the hell did I just see? I don't have my glasses on. What was that?
Oh, that was I typed in Young Boys Incorporated. And then, of course, there's a whole little piece on them, and you know, talking about drugs and crime and everything else. And I guess this is a picture of some of the guys, but you know,
like an old. Oh, okay, I can see
an old photo of I guess a lot of guys.
Yeah, I'm so surprised they haven't made a major motion picture on that group, because they started the crack game. I mean, they started that whole thing where you use adolescents to run your drugs, and if they get caught, they're adolescents. They go to juvenile and they're out the next day. It's no big deal, right? And they never carried more than a couple of, you know, 20, 30, 40 bucks of cash and 20, 30, 40 bucks or a couple of $100 maybe worth of drugs on them. So it's no big time you're not going to get any time for doing that. And, you know, you can go all over the place with this. You got the CIA pumping drugs into the hood and all that stuff so you can fight a foreign war. All this stuff ties back to what Tom has said, the Fed. All these narratives protect the Fed. But, and if you got younger African Americans realizing, one, that, wait a minute, all you got to do, like I call it Friday, because that's the guy who wakes up more eyes, because they're like, what? You said, wait a minute. So Ebonics didn't come from Africa? Like, no, fool. Ain't no such thing as Ebonics in Africa.
The one thing I'll say is this: it's not an original thought. This is something that I've kind of mixed together from other people. It's okay. So primarily, one, if you want to go to, I don't mean to harp on George Floyd, but just any black man that dies in that situation, right? What is the cause? It's always the CCP. It's always the Chinese Communist Party. Why? Because that's where our jobs got shipped. The fentanyl that was in his body came from there. The virus that was in his body also came from there. So there's that. And again, no job, no opportunity, no prospect. That's the first thing. The second thing is that what I heard Royce White say, and I thought was very, very amazing, was that slavery is human condition. It's not unique to America. It's not unique to Europe. It's not unique to anywhere else. The Africans didn't get tricked into putting chains on their own people and sending them over here. They knew what they were doing. Slavery is constant throughout humanity up until today, and the Federal Reserve is the ultimate form of slavery because it keeps you on that wheel where, like you and Mike were saying, or Andre and Mike, you guys were saying that you're out in the hood slinging drugs, putting yourself in harm's way in dangerous positions instead of at home with your family. Because why? You need dead presidents printed on freaking dollar bills in order to somehow feel better or do whatever, because you have been presented with no opportunities. Everything comes down to Federal Reserve, and it's all slavery. So yeah, maybe I'm white. I clearly have no slave ancestry, but we're all in the same boat now. We're all in the same boat.
You don't know that. You don't know that. There's such thing called white Christian slavery. No, seriously.
I know, indentured servitude and all that.
No, I ain't talking about indentured servitude. I'm talking about millions of white Europeans who were taken in, who were made slaves by Northern Africans, right? Millions up until like the 19th century. So you have people from what's that? Not Morocco, but right next to Tanzania, right? I got a book called Things I Wish I Learned in February. Hint, hint, right? Where this was back when the Pope had a lot of power. So it was Emperor, he was called the Emperor Charles IV or whatever. He sent the Armada to Northern Africa to stop them from coming all the way from, they were snatching people from Italy, France, all the way up through England, just kidnapping them and making them slaves, right? So Emperor Charles IV or V or whatever sent the Spanish Armada down there to, say no, like you're not taking no more of our people, right? But what happened, there was some crazy storm and his Armada got stuck in mud. So the Armenians or Tanzanians or whoever they were, they just, for lack of better terms, they just went and beat their ass and made slaves out of all of the Navy. And they had so many that they were selling them for onions. So just imagine that. Yes, they had so many slaves that they were selling them for onions. Now, here's the thing. Nobody knows that, but it's true. Right. So once people start to listen to Thomas Sowell, or at least read his book, then you go down, you got like 47 books, but it opens the door to questioning things like, wait, how come I don't know that? Like, how come I don't know that like a lot of African-American culture comes from Northern England? Like people were eating chitlins in Northern England well before any English person came over to America. They were frying up chicken in Northern England well before they set foot off the Mayflower. How come we don't know that, right? And it's not happenstance, right? And then going back to the Fed, when you're talking about people working for that dollar, like George Floyd, you don't have an opportunity to work for this worthless piece of paper. Well, why is that? Why are people so focused on risking their life and freedom for some money to go buy a pair of Jordans? Well, they push this narrative of consumption over production. And if you go to other countries, like if you go to Japan, I used to live in Japan. It was the opposite. Not saying that there's no materialism in Japan, but it was like, what's your job? What do you do? What's your hobby? It was always about production. Whereas here is how much you make. I don't care what you're doing to make it. How much do you make? Kim Kardashian, she's every little girl's hero, but she's a porn star. Like, that shouldn't fly, right? That shouldn't fly. You become a millionaire basketball player and start hustling backwards to look like a thug, right?
Yeah.
John Warren, as well, as we call
hustling backwards.
That shouldn't fly. But they push narratives to say, like, look, you gotta have the best clothes, the newest fashion. You gotta have 20 pair of Jordans or 30 pair of Jordans, and that helps that federal dollar. Ain't nobody ever told anybody to save money since 1985. So it's all about spending.
So basically, with incorporating slavery with what people do for currency puts the Federal Reserve as, I guess, the slave master in a sense. And so I think more people are waking up by force because of the difficulties on not having enough of this paper to sustain their lives the way they used to because of the expansion of the money supply and things like that. So here's a super chat and a question, and we'll wrap up on this one. But it says, what are your opinions on Argentina, Mexico, the UAE, Turkey, Egypt, and 20 other new countries wanting to join the Shanghai Cooperation and the BRICS? This came from Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov. The BRIC formation. What do you guys think?
I will just say that I have not heard of some of these countries definitely applying. Like Mexico, I've heard rumors. I talked to Andre about this. I've heard rumors. I don't know anything firm about this. Right. But okay, so yeah, it's the US dollar, the global hegemon of the US dollar is definitely at risk. But I will say this. Okay, the idea that BRICS is going to be some fair world order is absolutely just stupid, because one country is going to have more gold than the other. One is going to have more resources. One country is going to be the one that takes control, and they're going to do the same stupid crap that the United States did. It's the same outcome. Unless you start minting coins out of silver and gold, this never stops. And going back, wrapping around to the slavery, why do you sell or buy a slave? Because it multiplies your ability to be able to produce or to do a thing. The same thing goes for the government and the Federal Reserve. They're enslaving us in order to make things and do things in order to pump GDP and then pay the politicians and pay the bankers and this and that. It's the same system under a different name. So I don't think that the BRICS has a chance, only because we, in this term that I can't remember, we're so far down this timeline where things are so disconnected and broken, we can't put them back together anymore. Without a full and total just cleansing, I do not think that BRICS has a chance, simply because of the fact that things are just so disjointed. And if Mexico is a part of it, well, then welcome to just absolute Armageddon, because that's going to be totally crazy.
Yeah. If Mexico's in the BRICS, I'm pretty sure that that's not going to fly, even under sleepy Joe Biden. I mean, that's almost like putting a nuclear warhead in Mexico, because BRICS will have a digital currency. And if we don't have a digital, even if BRICS has a digital currency before we do, we're at a disadvantage. The government is at a disadvantage. Now the people are fine, right? But the government will be at a disadvantage, and the big banks will be at a disadvantage. But the people will be fine. But that will be the excuse for the government to push a digital currency on the people. Well, one of the excuses, right? And once that happens, then we're all screwed, because you're talking about slavery. Ain't no hiding it then, right? You are a slave, because they can cut off your funds. They can tell you what you get spend money on, what you can't spend money on, where you at, where you went. I mean, that's just straight up slavery without pretext. But I saw the rumor of Mexico, and if that happens, man, life as we know it is over, in my opinion. We will wake up the next day and be like, man, America was a really nice place to live yesterday. Today going forward, man, like I just tried to get something imported from China, which everything we own is everything in my house pretty much is made in China, except for wine and beer, right?
Mhm.
So I gotta this might not be made in China, but let's say a thermos made in China. Well, now you got to go get whatever the BRICS currency is in exchange for our dollars. We as Americans have never done that, right? So our cost of living is going to go through the roof. That's going to be
a downgrade. It's going to be a downgrade all the way around. And of course, credit won't be readily available. And it's going to shift from consumption model to a production model.
Oh, yeah.
in order to keep up, you're going to have to produce something. And so as far as all those countries that he mentioned, as of now, we know the official ones, which happen to be, I think, Saudi Arabia, Argentina, and a couple other ones, whatever. But all these other ones, it's clear that the nation's going east for a reason. Obviously, because they have some plans they're going to announce sometime soon. We'll find out what they are. But what's surprising to me about Mexico, if that is true, is that I remember during the previous administrations, especially during when it's democratically led, especially, they were talking about the North American Union wanting to unite Canada, U.S., and Mexico together and remove borders and make us, make this a regional governmental structure, which could still be in play in the future. But the fact that the Mexican president seemed to have gone or shifted towards the east, it's like, okay, maybe he's gone rogue in reference to not going and lock in step with the World Economic Forum agenda, even though he still has all the policies and things like that he's trying to eventually work in there. But I think it is a little surprising. But I think if everybody happens to shift towards the east, it's going to come around full circle in reference to digital ID, CBDCs, and the tyrannical government, unless those people who are in position now who's calling the shots are removed. So unless you remove the current mind frame and psychology of the way things are being governed now, we're gonna have the same thing just in a different environment. So it's
just real quick to loop this all the way back to the beginning of this, right? Why is this happening? Because Lopez Obrador, the Mexican president, I think today he released a statement. He called the Biden administration and all of his little twinks and fairies that inhabit it. He called them all liars. Why? Because they're trying, or they're even entertaining the idea of arresting Donald Trump. So now let's think, if you're another country, if you're the leader of another country, do you want to bank with the United States when they're arresting their former presidents? I mean, it's Banana Republic. Like, what makes us different than Argentina? That we have a sound law system, a financial system. And when we're breaking all of the rules whenever we want, why the hell would anybody want to do business with us after the fact? And I think that's really, it comes full circle. It goes all the way back to that. Print money.
The fact that Saudi Arabia is like, we'll take BRICS money, we'll take the ruble or the ruby instead of dollars. I mean, that should be headline news for weeks at a time. But instead Trump might get arrested Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, or we got this transgender who hates they don't want to transition anymore, or now California has cyclones. Like, what's really important is the money, right? And ain't nobody talking about the fact that the U.S. dollar is worth just nothing, man. I mean, literally nothing. I'm old enough. I'm not even that old, but I'm old enough to remember when this thing would buy me 25 pieces of penny candy, a Snickers, a Suzy Q, for those who don't know what that is Hostess like cake or whatever. And
you might be older than
pop.
you think.
I'm gonna say pop because Mike is here, but a soda for y'all who don't live in Michigan, right?
Fargo, be real.
For a dollar, dude, I can't buy it. There's a grocery store out here called Safeway. There's nothing in that store I can walk in that store and come out with for $1.
You probably still got to pay for the bag. You got to pay for the bags, don't you? You got to pay for the bags, the bag of groceries, right?
And the shopping cart.
I might be able to get a tomato. I might be able to walk out of there with a tomato or two. And I think they still sell those little packets of peanuts but I don't think they're for $1. They used to be 2 for $1. I think they're like 2 for $1.25 now. You can't get Dentyne gum for $1. Nothing for $1, dude. And this is in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
This is insane. Yeah. This is falling. We're falling off a cliff, and everybody's talking about, Ja Morant and, all this nonsense. But,
hey,
maybe people will wake
on
up.
Top of the distractions, man. But let's get ready to dial back, maybe about that 50-minute mark. Dre, you got a book of the week for us? I know you do.
Yeah, I can give you. Yeah. One of the most eye-opening books I've ever read. Besides, you can go pick any Thomas Sowell book. I'll just say, put in the name Thomas Sowell. Black Rednecks and White Liberals is by far, that first 67 pages of that book is a life changer for everybody, especially African Americans. But a lot of his source material is from. Can you bring that up, Mike? Yeah, a lot of his source materials act on culture and the origins of African American culture, Tom, your culture, white culture in America is four distinct. There's four distinct cultures from Britain that came here. One was rednecks, another one's Cavalier culture. So it's not just a basketball team; it's a group of people, culture called Cavaliers, the Puritans, and the northern region of Britain. So there's four distinct white cultures that came to America at first, and blacks were exposed primarily to the rednecks and the Cavalier culture. This information comes from a book called Albion Seed. Albion. Albon, I believe. Albion.
IAN, I think.
IAN. Okay, that's another word for English, right? I believe it's another word, English word for English or a Welsh word for English, whatever.
No, I just heard this in passing talking about Thomas Sowell. I've never read it.
Yeah, it's that book. That is an American history book of the ages because it tells you, it breaks down all the cultural traits of these four distinct cultures that came to America. And it's not targeted at like Black history. It's not like Black history, but you just read between the lines. If the major slaveholders were Cavaliers and the surrounding poor whites were basically from Northern Britain culture, that's where Black folks over the course of 400 years picked up most of their culture, not the Puritans who were in the North, right? So it just makes sense. A lot of our speech ways, the ways we believe, things we believe in, things we're scared of, just sexual promiscuity. Like if the term, he's a Puritan, meaning, he don't do that thing. Whereas a lot of people from Northern Britain and the rednecks, they were called rednecks in Northern Britain. So I'm not insulting anybody. Before anybody stepped foot on American soil, they were called rednecks over there. Where they were loose as all out, man. They just had sex with any and everybody. So a lot of those attributes we kind of absorb just being in their presence. So those are two. I gave you two. So those are great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, man. So yeah, I gotta jump on some of these books, man. But I'm already reading. I'm trying to read a chapter a day in a book, so I'm kind of in backlog.
Hey.
So what up?
The Fourth Turning.
Audio books.
No.
Yeah, because you can do so much, man. While you at the gym, plug them in and just cutting the grass, shoveling the snow. Like, if you want to tune out your significant other, like.
I think one of the most important books is the Fourth. I'm sorry, I know we're trying to cut it off. I'm sorry.
No, go to I'm just
the Fourth Turning. One of the most important books that anybody needs to read. But yes, I'm sorry, Mike. Let's wind this down.
It's all good. But as always, gentlemen, it's good to connect. Hope everyone had a good time just hearing some different thoughts and opinions. And of course, one of the primary reasons to be able to connect and share some laughs as well. So I appreciate you guys. But based upon all the stuff happening right now, man, I just sense that there's more people waking up, therefore a greater chance for resistance of people pushing back and literally not just going for the okie doke anymore. And so if that is the case, then I mean they're gonna have to ante up and double down on what they're doing propaganda wise And of course, they're outsourcing stuff. They're going to use AI and stuff like that to start really ramping things up to benefit them. But anyway, we'll talk about that next week. But all right, gentlemen, as always, we got the coming conflict as well as the broke capitalist. You guys, the link will be down in the description. Go check them out. And other than that, gentlemen, enjoy your week, and we'll be back at it next week, man.